And the Rtvik debate goes on. This is Amiyatma Das, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. We're going to be discussing the Rtvik debate in ISKCON in this video. The fact is, you can't force a guru who is no longer present in this world. You can't force a guru to accept you as their disciple. That guru has to make that decision to accept you themselves. You just can't force yourself on them and force them to become your guru. Let's say I have an affinity toward Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati or Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Rupa Goswami. I can't force them to accept me as their disciple. They have to make that decision themselves. And since they or any other past acharya, including Srila Prabhupada, are no longer present to make that decision themselves, we cannot force ourselves on them and force them to accept us as their disciple. Even when the acharya is present in this world, we can't force, we can't go to Srila Prabhupada or any other guru and say, oh, I'm not going to chant Hare Krishna mantra, I'm not going to chant japa, I'm not going to follow these four regular principles, but you are going to be my guru. I'm going to force you to initiate me. No, you can't do that. This has never been done before or allowed in the disciplic succession. It's obviously a deviant idea that we can do so with any other past acharya. Therefore, it is just as ridiculous and deviant when applied to Srila Prabhupada. But those who support the ongoing Rtvik representative of the acharya system, they claim that you can still approach Srila Prabhupada and he can still give initiation, even though you can't do that with any other past acharya. They claim it is something you can still do with Srila Prabhupada. Well, let's dig a little deeper and just see which is right, actually. The first place to start is to really understand just what this Rtvik representative of the acharya system that Srila Prabhupada had set up and authorized by the document now known as the July 9th letter. I mean, just what was that system? First of all, we need to understand what the system was that Srila Prabhupada authorized via the July 9th, 1977 Rtvik Acharya appointment letter. With this letter or document, Srila Prabhupada had set up an initiation by proxy system. That is, Srila Prabhupada had delegated all the physical or mundane aspects of the initiation process to his various disciples, such that Srila Prabhupada was no longer physically involved in the process at all. That system that he authorized was solely unique and radical. It was a process that no past acharya had ever established previously, even while they were present in this world. Such a system was unprecedented. This is the system of initiation by proxy, or the Rtvik representative system that Srila Prabhupada had authorized via the July 9th letter. Number one, Srila Prabhupada had long before delegated the process of assessment of the new student to the temple president. Srila Prabhupada had established the following criteria that a new student needed to follow for a minimum of 6 months for the first initiation, and for another year after that for the second initiation. The temple president would make the assessment on behalf of Srila Prabhupada that the student had met those criteria for the given time. Then the temple president would write a letter of recommendation and send it not to Srila Prabhupada, but to the nearest Rtvik representative, and who would recommend that student be given first or second initiation. 2, the student would make his assessment of Srila Prabhupada, whether he's the actual bona fide guru, via the study of his books, listening to his lectures, and learning of his teachings from the temple president, sannyasis, GBCs, senior devotees, and other members. 3, on receiving the letter of recommendation from the temple president, the Rtvik representative will notify the temple president that the student has been accepted as Srila Prabhupada's disciple. Number 4, the Rtvik representative would give the spiritual name and chant on the beads for the first initiates and chant on the thread for the second initiates. As far as the Gayatri mantra, Srila Prabhupada had made a recording of himself chanting the Gayatri that was to be played via headphone into the ear of the Brahmin initiate. Or he had also authorized GBC members could also chant the mantra in the ear if the recording was not available. The temple president or the Rtvik would perform the fire yagna. The new member would then become a direct initiated disciple of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada set up a system by which he can accept new disciples, and yet he need not be physically present or involved. And the GBC agrees. They agree that he didn't have to be physically present, well, at least not in the same temple room. They agree that he doesn't have to be physically present in the same building. They agree that he doesn't have to be in the same city or the same province or state or the same country or even on the same continent. Once Srila Prabhupada had authorized the Rtvik representatives, Srila Prabhupada could be laying very weak in his bed in Vrindavan, India, that he can't even sit up on his own, and so weak he could barely speak. And yet via this Rtvik representative system, via the Rtvik representatives, he can be initiating new disciples in North America, South America, Africa, New Zealand, Japan, Europe, the Middle East, South India, Bengal, Russia, China, Mauritius, etc., without any need for his physical presence there or his physical involvement at all in the process. Well, that system, it was just completely unheard of. No past acharya. It was totally unprecedented. No past acharya had ever set up such a system like that. Not that we know of. That even while that guru remained living in this world, where they were able to continue to accept disciples, initiate disciples as their own disciples through a system of, a proxy system that they had authorized to enact the physical aspects of the process on their behalf, where that guru was no longer physically involved or physically partook in that process at all. Such a system was totally unheard of and is totally unheard of. Yet that very system that His Divine Grace did establish and did authorize, the GBC at the time accepted it as bona fide. But they say it was bona fide only as long as Srila Prabhupada remained living in his temporary earthly Vapu form somewhere on this planet. Once he left his temporary Vapu form, then they claim that this system lost all of its spiritual potency, and that to even suggest that it still remains valid today, the GBC today consider that as a great offense and a deviation from their philosophy. But how does that change the fact that one cannot force oneself on a past acharya who is no longer present and force them to accept you as their disciple? I mean, that argument, it remains 100% valid and correct concerning all past acharyas, including for our Srila Prabhupada. So this means that the supporters of the ongoing Rtvik representative system are just totally wrong, right? Wrong. Wait, what do you mean wrong? How can that be? I just said that this also applies to Srila Prabhupada, that you can't force him to accept you as your disciple because he's no longer present in this world. And yes, that part is totally true. You cannot force any of the past acharyas, including Srila Prabhupada, to accept you as their disciple. Then why am I saying that the supporters of the ongoing Rtvik system are actually not wrong? Well, the answer is very simple. Because of the Rtvik representative of the Acharya system that His Divine Grace had set up and authorized and established. He had authorized those who he had selected to act as his Rtvik representatives. And by the way, he did inform that the GBC can add to that list as needed in the future. So those who Srila Prabhupada had authorized as his Rtvik representatives, Srila Prabhupada had authorized those Ritviks to accept the recommendations for initiations that were given by the temple presidents. In other words, the temple presidents before had sent their letters of recommendations to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada would then make that final decision of accepting those who the temple presidents had recommended to be his disciples. But with the July 9th letter, Srila Prabhupada had now set up a system of Rtvik representatives by which he authorized them and told that from henceforward the temple presidents are now to send their letters of recommendations to those Ritviks. And Srila Prabhupada had authorized them to now accept on his behalf the recommendations given by the temple presidents. And that those who are then accepted by the Rtvik representative will become Srila Prabhupada's direct disciple. Srila Prabhupada had, as I said, previously authorized the temple presidents to make the assessment of the new bhaktas on his behalf. And once the new bhaktas or those going for second initiation had met the criteria given by Srila Prabhupada, then the temple presidents would send that letter of recommendation, used to send it to Srila Prabhupada. But now he said, henceforward, the temple presidents to send their letters of recommendation to the nearest Rtvik, to the nearest Rtvik to those devotees who were seeking initiation. And Srila Prabhupada authorized those Rtvik representatives to accept the recommendations given by the temple presidents on his behalf. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada had set up a system by which he has authorized others, the Ritviks, to make the decisions on his behalf whether or not to accept a new member as his direct disciples. Via that authorized system, no one is forcing Srila Prabhupada to accept them as his disciple. No one is forcing him to accept new disciples without his prior authorization. This remained true while Srila Prabhupada remained living in this world. Even before he had established the Rtvik representative system, no one could force Srila Prabhupada to accept them as his disciple. There was a process that he had established, and that process was you join the temple, you come in the association of the devotees. The temple presidents then assess you. And here's the criteria that Srila Prabhupada set. If you want to be his disciple, you chant your 16 rounds, you follow the 4 regulative principles, you perform devotional service, you attend as much of the programs. I'm saying all the programs if they join the temple, if they were living outside, as many of the programs as they can. And once, for 6 months, the temple president will give his recommendation to Srila Prabhupada. That was how the process was before. And then Srila Prabhupada would maybe ask a GBC, you select the names and you chant on the beads. Prabhupada did that even while he was present. But with the July 9th letter, Srila Prabhupada now said, no, the temple presidents now, from henceforward, they send their recommendations to the nearest Rtvik, and he had authorized the Rtvik to accept those recommendations on his behalf. So with that process, Srila Prabhupada was no longer needed to be physically involved in the physical aspects of the initiation. No one had to inform him or ask his permission or to see that he had accepted those recommendations. He authorized the Rtvik representatives to accept those recommendations on his behalf. No past acharya had ever set up such a system like this. It was totally unprecedented, and it is. And yet the GBC accepts that system was bona fide, but they say only while Srila Prabhupada was physically present somewhere on this world. They say that as soon as Prabhupada left his Vapu, earthly Vapu form, and was no longer living in this world, in that Vapu form, they said that that process has lost all of its spiritual potency. And Srila Prabhupada had established the system and set it up, authorized it, even while he was present. And at no time, nowhere in his instructions in the July 9th letter had he ever said that there was a time limit or that it required his physical presence for that system to be authorized, to be empowered. The GBC claimed that that system lost all its spiritual potency as soon as Srila Prabhupada left his Vapu form and was no longer living in his earthly Vapu form. But that is not what empowered the system. That is not what empowered Srila Prabhupada to give spiritual initiation to those without his having been physically involved in the physical process of the initiation process. What empowered that system, this Rtvik system, is Srila Prabhupada's eternal living instructions, his Vani. And that has not changed. Though what the GBC say, the system has become totally, lost all its spiritual potency and has become a deviant, unempowered, no longer empowered process, is based on actually a very deviant philosophy, because they are basing this idea on that Srila Prabhupada's temporary earthly Vapu form is what empowered those Rtvik initiations. And that is not what empowered those Rtvik initiations. That is a bogus philosophy. That is apasiddhanta. That is no basis in our understanding of Guru. What empowered those initiations, even while Srila Prabhupada was physically still present in Vrindavan, what empowered those Rtvik initiations was Srila Prabhupada's eternal Vani, the instructions that he gave that empowered those who he had selected to act as his Rtvik representatives. And then he empowered the GBC that they can select additional Ritviks as needed. Srila Prabhupada empowered that system through his eternal Vani, his living Vani, his living instructions, and that has not changed. That has not died. It lives in the heart of his followers eternally. Please watch the full online presentation on this issue that I have made. The link is given at in the descriptions below this video. Okay? Thank you. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.